Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm going to be taking your questions on injector seals, oil pans, turbochargers, and more. This is episode 134 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, so to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@HumbleMechanic.com, and be sure to put question for Charles in the subject. Also, you guys have been doing so awesome, and I really appreciate it. Ask your question right at the top, mash the enter button a couple of times, then give me the details down below so that I can get your question out and answered much faster. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time and doing that for me. It makes my life so much easier when answering these questions. All right, so before we get into your questions, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, air conditioning components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory Volkswagen and Audi DSG fluids. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. All right, one more thing before we get into your questions. I've been doing more quick one question, one answer videos, all shot from my iPhone, really quick, unedited, straight up to YouTube. There's a quick videos playlist on YouTube, so make sure you check that out as well, because I'm trying to answer a lot more questions than I can cram in on just one of this kind of show. All right, with that, let's get into the questions. First one comes from Josh. I just watched your CCTA intake manifold failure video. I'm a VW tech in Florida and I've done a good few of these also. You mentioned that this is a repair that a DIYer could do. How would a DIYer pull this off if they have to have an injector pull out of the head with the rail when removing the intake and they do not have the injector seal kit to replace and reshape the Teflon seal on the injector? I don't think I've ever done one of these without at least one injector pulling out with the fuel rail. Josh, great question. So this is an old video that I did on failures of the intake manifold on the CCTA. And sometimes, yeah, the injector will come out with the fuel rail. Sometimes you get really lucky and all four injectors will stay in the cylinder head. But like Josh mentioned, most of the time you get at least one. I usually end up with two out. And in order to properly reinstall this, you are going to want to replace the injector seals, especially the lower ones that are actually seal it into the cylinder head, which is a Teflon seal, and it's a really big seal that you have to use a special tool kit in order to reshape the seals, just like Josh mentioned. I always replace the blue ones at the end of the injector, but if they don't come out, I won't necessarily take them out if I don't have to. So there's a couple of things we can do. There are kits to replace these injector seals, and they're not really that expensive, maybe $100 for the entire kit. So if you're doing this repair yourself, even if you had to buy the injector seal replacement kit, you're still saving a bunch of money by doing the job yourself and not paying, a shop or the dealership or whatever to do this repair. So buying the kit, not a problem. Then you can turn around, sell it on Craigslist or whatever, make a little bit of your money back. We can also, if the injectors come out, I would probably take all four of them and just bring them to the dealership and ask them to install the seal kit on each injector. So if you got to pay like $60 for them to just reseal the injectors and then you install them yourself, again, you're still saving a ton of money. Those would probably be my two best options for replacing injector seals if they do happen to come out of the cylinder head on the CCTA. We have to remember there's the DIY and then there's paying to have the whole job done. There's a lot in between that we can do. We can take just, hand them to the dealership. Hey, will you reseal these injectors for me? You're buying the seals anyway, so having, another $50, $60 to replace the seals is not that big of a deal. We can buy the tool kit. That's another option. There's a lot of other jobs that we can do as DIYers, a bulk of it, and then take it somewhere for kind of the hard part or the part where you need a special tool. Another one that's a really great example is suspension bushings. And this is probably what I'm going to do with the control arm bushings on the GTI. I'm going to remove them here at the house, and then I'm probably going to take them to the dealership to press new bushings in, because frankly, that's a job that while you can do it at the house, you really still need like a special tool or a special setup in order to cram those bushings into the control arms. And the key there, just like with the injector seals, is going to be not tearing up the seal and messing it up. Then you're just buying the part again and doing the job all over again. So Josh, great question. That's probably what I would do as a DIYer. And let's say all four of them came out, take them to a shop that has the seal installer kit and ask them to do it, or me being me, that's a great way to justify buying a new tool. All right, next one comes from Andy. I have a 2014 Volkswagen Passat TDI. Just yesterday, my turbocharger on my 14 Passat failed to work after encountering some strange metal noises. My question, where can I get the parts for a decent price? Will VW cover the cost of replacement? So Andy, this 100% depends on what happened and what mileage you're at on your vehicle, and really what the in-service date is. So we have a model year 14, but what we have to remember on model years, the vehicle could have been delivered the year before. Now, we're early in 2016 as I'm answering this question today, so odds are it's not a case of out of warranty by time, but we could very easily be out of warranty by mileage. That's going to be something covered under the powertrain warranty, most likely, so that's a 5-year, 60,000 mile warranty anyway, which means we got plenty of mileage and plenty of time to be covered, hopefully on a 2014. My first thing I would do is get it to the dealership, let them diagnose it, and see if it's covered under powertrain, because then it's not going to cost you a dime. Here's the hang up though. We need to see why this failed. Is it a straight parts failure, manufacturer defect type? Then it should be covered, should be no problem. I've seen a handful of Passat turbochargers replaced under warranty for just straight up failures, not catastrophic failures based on lack of oil pressure or neglect in some other way. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a straight failure manufacturer defect. But there are other things that can play into this situation that will make this not covered under warranty. Things like lack of maintenance. If you have a 2014 and you've had 0 oil changes, probably not going to be covered because it's neglect on your part. If you haven't had an oil change in 20,000 miles, probably not going to be covered under warranty because, again, that is neglect. So, if it's a straight failure, no problem, should be covered under warranty as long as your vehicle is still under warranty. We do, as technicians in these kind of situations, we will look at outside influence as a factor in their failure, but it's such a rare thing to see that kind of stuff happen that most often when it's a stock vehicle, especially a TDI, has a failure, we can't prove or we don't find any evidence to investigate the situation further, and it's covered under warranty, we slap a turbocharger on it, clean the intakes, ducting and whatever. Make sure the oil passages are clean. Make sure the turbo feed line and return line are all clean and not clogged up. Sometimes we'll replace the oil feed line. That really depends on the situation, and you're good to go and happy as can be. If you are having to replace the turbocharger, there's a bunch of TDI websites that you can get this. I would check fixmyvw.com, idparts.com, Kerma TDI. Deutsche Auto Parts might sell that turbo. I know a lot of times they don't deal in diesel parts, diesel hard parts like that, but those would pretty much be my group of websites that I would go to first if I had to pay for those parts. And the great thing about it is these guys all know these cars, they know the diesel really well, so they can also help you get all that other stuff that you're going to need beyond just the turbocharger. They can help you with gaskets and seals and oil and coolant and all the stuff that you're going to want to also replace if you end up having to replace that turbocharger. All right, next one comes from Wasil. Hi, I have a VW Jetta. I'm 16 years old and want to know what you suggest I do to it. I have a large toolkit. The car has 450,000 kilometers on the clock, and I want to get used to mechanics. So, great question. What I don't know is, what do you mean by what should I do with it? To me, the very first thing that we should always take care of on any vehicle is going to be maintenance. We want to make sure that all of our maintenance is caught up. So he didn't put what engine it has in it, so let's assume that it's just a plain old 2-liter, nothing fancy. The very first things that I would do would be an air filter, a pollen filter, a fuel filter, spark plugs, and an oil change. And what I would do is I would do the air filter, pollen filter, fuel filter, spark plugs. I would do that all myself. Those are all really easy things to do. I did a video about doing an air filter and some tips on replacing any air filter. I'll be sure to link that up for you guys to check out. It's a little bit different on your car, but the principles and the techniques and the tips are all going to apply no matter what. Then what I would do with the oil change is I would take it somewhere that really knows Volkswagens. And here's why I would take it in for the oil change. One, doing an oil change at home can be a lot of hassle that may not be worth it. Now, I know a ton of you guys do your own oil changes at home, and that's awesome, and I applaud you for it, but oil changes are one that dealerships and service stations really don't make money on, so the pricing is really good. For example, at my dealership, if you brought your own oil and you brought your own oil filter, it'd cost you about 17 bucks for us to do all the work. But beyond just straight the oil change, what you're getting is generally, at a good place, a full vehicle inspection. So they're gonna rack the car up, they're gonna look at your brakes, they're gonna look at your belts and tires and hoses and suspension components and all the other things that your vehicle might need that might be a little bit challenging to look at while the car's, this far off the ground on jack stands. So I would pay that little bit and just have them look over the vehicle and let you know, hey, you got rear brakes that are going to need to be replaced soon, or something really common on the Mark IV, like your suspension bushings are worn, or your parking brake cables are toast, or things like that. Now we have a list. Now we have a list of things that we can do and make sure that are all up in good repair. So now we're going to go through that list and fix our suspension components, suspension bushings, parking brake cables, brakes, whatever else it needs. Now our vehicle is 100% back up and good and properly maintained. Now we can start thinking about doing fun things. If we want to lower the vehicle, let's lower the vehicle. That'll actually overlap really well with suspension bushings anyway. Maybe we want to put a new radio in the car. I don't know. What are your goals? What do you want this car to be? Do you want it to be a stock car, daily driver, never mess with it? Or do you want to have a little fun with it and put some different wheels on it, lower it, maybe put an exhaust on it? The exhaust could be bolt-on. That kind of mileage, I might be leaning more towards having someone else install it, because you're going to run into a lot of rust, I would assume, depending on where you're from. So, man, start small, do little things, do maintenance things, do things that you are not going to get so far into and then way over your head you're not going to be able to get out of, or maybe you don't have the right tools for. Start small and work your way up. Learn as you go. Write down any problems that you run into, and then learn from those issues and hiccups that you run into, because you're going to have them. It's going to happen. Heck, it happens to professionals anyway. So good luck. I hope that answers your question. Again, take it easy, start small, start in a way that even if you mess something up, like you didn't put the airbox in right all the way, it's not that big of a deal. All right, next one comes from Jose. I have a 2012 CC 2.0 Turbo, which is still under warranty. It's running rough at idle in the morning when the engine is cold. The car shakes. I've replaced the spark plugs, 2 ignition coils, cylinder 2 and 4, and the PCV valve as well. The car is still doing the same thing. What can I do to fix this problem? One more question, as the vehicle is still under warranty, in the case the manifold needs to be replaced, is it covered by the warranty? So let's talk about the manifold really quick. It will only be covered under the warranty if it fails. If the manifold is not bad, it's not covered under warranty because nothing has failed. Generally, as in almost all the time, parts aren't replaced just because there's a new or updated part. It has to fail first before a dealership will ever replace it. Now, back to your other question, the first question. You got cold start misfires, my friend. That's what's going on. You probably have carbon buildup on the backs of the intake valves. I've done other videos about this. I've talked about this before, and I won't rehash all of it. I'll link up to other videos that I've done about this exact situation, how it happens, and really the only remedy is to take the intake manifold off and clean all of the carbon buildup on the backs of the valves. There's a couple of ways that it works out really well for a customer. If the vehicle's under warranty and the manifold fails, generally we, at my dealership, will look at the backs of the valves and go, hey, you got a ton of carbon buildup. Volkswagen paid for us to take the intake manifold off. Do you want to pay to have us clean the carbon? And it saves a customer a bunch of money because now they're not paying the R&R of the intake manifold. So that works out really well. It's good for us as technicians. We do a little bit more work on the car. It's great because the customer saves a bunch of money as opposed to doing it independently. And then, we get a new intake manifold and all the problems are fixed all at once. All right, we got time for one more. This one comes from Len. Do I have to buy a new oil pan, or is there a kit to fix an oil drain plug? I have an '01 Golf 2.0, and I believe the stock drain plug was over tightened before I purchased the car. I read on Vortex that I should replace the crush washer with every oil change. O'Reilly's didn't have the crush washer, but they carry a plug and washer. I bought one, it doesn't fit, it never gets tight. I installed the drain plug that came with the car just so I could use the car. Here's a picture of the drain plug. Thanks, and I love the show. All right, Len, we have a couple of options. We can absolutely put a new pan on it. There's a couple options for the pan. There's the direct replacement aluminum oil pan, which is going to be probably the same exact pan that the car has on it now. There's also a hybrid oil pan, which has an aluminum upper pan and a steel lower pan where the drain plug goes in. That's a much better way to go if we're going to replace the oil pan. That way, you know, the threads will hold up a little bit longer. These threads on these aluminum pans eventually tend to wear out, so I'm not terribly surprised that you're having to deal with this issue. We also have a couple of other options. There are drain plugs that will thread in, and they're kind of this universal thing. I'm sure places like Pep Boys and AutoZone and O'Reilly's sell them. I don't really like those, but if it torques down and doesn't leak, then it'll get you what you need to have done. We can also make a new drain plug. My very wonderful good friend Eric the Car Guy did a video, I want to say his was on an Acura or a Lexus. Essentially what you're doing is cutting down a bolt, and instead of having a drain plug that's about like this, you lengthen it, and that'll grab the threads further into the pan. It's not a bad solution. It's a great temporary solution. Over time, I would worry the longevity of that kind of repair, but it will work, and it'll work really well. We also have another option called a time cert. This is where a sleeve gets installed in the pan, and then we have a drain plug that functions just like the factory one does. That's a great repair, but I'll be honest, I don't know if on a 2-liter I would really go that route. What I love that for is things like the Torags, where you're taking the engine out basically in order to put a new oil pan on. So, you know, ton of work, which makes doing the time cert well worth it, because the time cert kit is not cheap, but it works incredibly well. For me, I would probably put a hybrid pan on it. It's generally a bit cheaper than the all aluminum pan. The threads hold up a lot better, and you're not gonna have to worry quite so much about the next oil change. There's also those little valves that you install in the pan, and then you never have to take the thing out. Some people swear by them. I don't really like that idea. I have this vision in my head of a rock popping up, hitting it, and you know, dumping all the oil out of your oil pan. So I'm a little leery about those things, especially on cars that are lowered or whatever. You bring that oil pan quite a bit closer to the ground. That makes me a bit nervous. So I don't think I would go that route. Not faulting anybody for doing that. Just not really my thing. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, post it in the comment section below. Hey, if you like the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at humblemechanic.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, and obviously right here on YouTube. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Not really a drink of the day, just a water, because, I don't know, it's water.